Hey guys, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my current Cyclone build and how it's been tackling the current Legion League. As we all know, Melee has undergone a very large rework, and everything feels much smoother and much more responsive, as well as much faster and stronger as well. From the way that you chain your mobility skills, your combat skills, and other systems that you might consider to put into your build. We'll talk about this later on. So all of this that you're seeing is in a private league, so it's essentially SSF. So far it's been a very smooth experience, from leveling to mapping to progressing the build. It's been very strong as well, with really fun gameplay. Cyclone is my favorite playstyle, and there's tons of new options to consider, from support gems to other systems that you might include in your build, so I want to talk about that later. So the strong points of this build and the Cyclone in general is that it has really strong AoE. Mobility is insanely fast due to a lot of new stuff. It's fairly tanky, with the use of new skills and setups. Blood explosions make the clear very smooth and consistent, and they doesn't leave barely any stragglers ever. You have free charge generation, and it makes a really good all-rounder build. You can boss really well, have not had a single issue with single target. It clears decently fast. Although, as any melee build, it always has the same con of your build is only good as your weapons are, and this might make it or break it for you. It might be a little bit awkward to level, although Cyclone is better than ever for leveling, so you can level with Cyclone if you feel like. This build doesn't have the fastest clear, not when you compare it to the likes of ED Contagion or just other heavily clear speed focused abilities and builds out there, especially for Legion monoliths. So far it makes for a very good all-rounder. I haven't really had an issue with any type of content yet. I've been doing from tier 7 to 10 maps consistently, because that's what I'm progressing currently, and so far so good on anything really. It's been really nice, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. So first of all, you might be wondering, why did I pick Gladiator over the current Slayer or Berserker or even Champion? So first of all, we get the new stuff with Gladiator, which is called the Challenger Charges. They essentially give you 20% more attack and move speed at all times, which is amazing, especially for Cyclone, because you're investing into the movement speed of Cyclone with certain choices in the tree and in your gear that make it so that Cyclone feels the smoothest out of everything. This option gives you the most mobility and most damage with Leap Slam, and it's a really good option, and it's the first thing that you should pick straight out of normal lab, because it makes your build feel so much smoother. Gladiator also gets Blood Explosions, which is definitely essential to every melee skill almost. Blood Explosions get rid of porcupines, crab monsters, and other on-death effect monsters that are very dangerous to the melee playstyle and just builds in general. It also brings you consistency in clearing all of the screen and leaving no stragglers behind. So it also, in the case of Gladiator, it makes your Blood Explosion scalable through percent of physical gained as extra elemental or chaos effects, so it makes it better than just using the Hemophilia unique gloves. Also, Gladiator gives you charge generation, which you might think is not that impressive, but getting the free endurance charges mostly is pretty good and gives you another defensive layer that is honestly always welcome. So we're not picking Slayer, at least for a starter, because Slayer is more reliant on gear, especially because you will need the Hemophilia gloves to fill the void from Gladiator. Although Slayer has more AoE, and overall it might be smoother once you have enough gear, and I'm planning to maybe swap to it once I have my final gear, but so far it's only a consideration. The Berserker might be another contender, although I think it's quite lacking mechanically compared to Gladiator and Slayer, because it only really gives you attack damage and attack speed. Doesn't really give you stuff like Blood Explosions or more AoE or stuff like that. But it still might be a very good option when you have good gear and you're allowed to go for a more defensive tree, and because you get just so much attack speed from your tree that you don't really need to get much or any in the tree at all. For the gear of this build, the single most important point of focus is of course the weapons. The weapons are what determines how good your build is, so the better they are, the better your build is gonna feel, like I said. The one thing that we must absolutely have is a foil in our main hand, because they're the weapons that have the biggest range in the entire game at 14 baseline. And then your offhand can be just the best sword that you can find. After that, our point of focus will be in jewelry and grabbing as much flat added fizz as possible, in your rings, your amulets, and in your gloves, because you can get some there as well. That comes a long way to adding onto your damage. Cyclone really benefits from these sources of flat added damage, as well as any attack really. Moving on to the Veiled Craft of +1 to weapon range. You can grab this by finding amulets with this Veiled mod, and then you can craft it on your amulets. You can do the same for helmets, so you can have +1 range in your helmet and on your amulet. This goes a long way to adding on to your range overall of your Cyclone, your reach, your AoE, and it'll make your build feel better. So be on the lookout for those. Do your Betrayal, get your Veil Crafts, and get your gear. Other things that are important for Cyclone mainly is movement speed, so obviously get as much movement speed as you can in your boots, 30% preferably, 25% at least. It's really important. And what we also have here to add as even a little bit more of speed is an Alchemist Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. So we get a really big boost of movement speed from our flask. It lasts for a very short while, but as long as you play efficiently, it shouldn't be a problem. So be on the lookout for those, use your alterations, maybe buy one on trade if you want. As for the main links on Cyclone, what I've landed on is Cyclone, Close Combat Support, Rage, Pulverize, and Infused Channeling. I would use Infused Channeling as my 6th link, but the colors of my chest don't really allow me to use another red. Otherwise, I would use Fortify here for sure. If you don't like Infused Channeling, or if you don't want to use a blue gem for whatever reason, you can just use a melee Fizz gem. It should be more damage than any other option that you can get. As for our mana reservations, we're running Flesh and Stone and Blood and Sand. The reason we run Flesh and Stone is that it gives us a lot of mitigation from targets that aren't nearby. So targets that are further away than the current range that you see around your character will hit you for less, and this includes things from off-screen, projectiles from far away that are really important to mitigate against. And when you turn on Blood Stance, it just gives you another damage boost that is pretty good to use. So together with Blood and Sand, which will then take a little bit away of your AoE and give you more damage, it makes for really fun gameplay of stance dancing and swapping stances according to what you're fighting currently, so I can highly recommend doing that. Blood and Sand also gives us a lot of AoE in Sand Stance at the cost of a slight bit of damage, so it's pretty important. We're also using Herald of Ash and Herald of Purity. That's just what I've landed on. I'm not exactly sure if that's the most efficient use of our mana. You can always use Pride as well if you feel like it. There's so many more auras that you can use and consider to put in the build. Those are just the ones that have been working out for me, and I'm just going to keep using them until I finally figure out what I really want to use. I really wanted to use more active skills like Berserk and the guard skills, but as you can see, I'm really limited by the amount of things that you can have on the action bar, which is currently limited to 7, so I can't fit anything else, which leads me to using a passive cast damage take an immortal call setup. This has been a problem with the game that's been ongoing for the past few leagues, and it's only getting increasingly worse as they add new skills and new stuff to promote active gameplay, so I hope that gets figured out soon enough. So far, this has been an extremely fun and extremely consistent build to play. It makes for a very good delve build, as you can just press your Quicksilver and just go and take down the entire delve path all the way until the objective, which then is pretty nice to clear. It's tackled everything so far super well. I've done Legion bosses, I've done Syndicate bosses. Everything that I've thrown this build at, it has absolutely just exceeded my expectations, because again, this is all SSF gear and it's not the best that I could have hoped for, so I was thinking that I might have to cut some corners when it comes to damage, but absolutely not. The damage has been just simply there. It's been very smooth, but again, it depends on how good your weapons are. In general, that's how you're gonna feel. Like, if you have good weapons, it's gonna be a good build. If your weapons are mediocre, then it might feel a little slightly worse. But yeah, I'm having tons of fun, and I hope this answered a lot of people's questions maybe, and yeah, I'll see you guys around. Thank you.